Previously, we made a video on the whole idea of the frontier in Assassin's Creed 3 and just kind of why we loved it. And I think it was the encapsulation, I guess I should say, of the idea we're talking about today, which is segmented cities. The idea of a hub that connects different cities, that you go back to that hub and travel through it, I think is really grounding in video games. And I think you can see that it's grounding in video games. It's one of the primary things that even a developer like From Software does to this day, where they will send you back to Firelink Shrine, or they will send you back to Majula, or back to the Round Table Hold, or the Hunter's Nightmare, whatever you want to look at. And Assassin's Creed did this for a while, where they would have segmented cities, and they'd send you through an area to get to them, and it still felt like an open world, but it felt like there was direction to it. I think something that we wanted to talk about today with modern Assassin's Creed in general is the idea that they've kind of abandoned these standalone cities, with different themes and different feelings in the same game, and opted more for just one big world. Which I think you can do both, but I really miss this.
Yeah, this is something that I always really liked in Assassin's Creed. Like, for example, in Assassin's Creed 1, you can go to, like, Jerusalem or Damascus or Masyaf, and there's like that in-between area that you can go to get around to them.
Yeah, the kingdom.
Yeah. Or in Assassin's Creed 2, there was like Florence and Venice and Monteriggioni, and you could actually travel between them by going through the mountains and stuff. After 2, largely, I would say in general, they've kind of abandoned this idea of having multiple cities in one game. And to be honest, I kind of miss it. Because I really like this in 1 and 2. Yes, I know in 4, I know you can go to multiple islands and you can go to multiple different towns on these islands and stuff.
Ports.
And there's ports and things like that. I understand that. I know in the newer games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I know you can go to multiple different cities like London and things like that. I understand that. But the difference to me is in these older games, each of these cities I felt like had their own unique character to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, in Assassin's Creed 2, the city of Venice was all based around water, just like it is now. It's all based around, having rivers that run through the town, and there's boats you can actually jump across as you're crossing the rivers, and things like that. Venice felt very, very different from something like Florence.
Yes.
For example. Florence had its own unique flavor to it, its own unique town, everything. That's something that I miss. I feel like a lot of the cities nowadays, their options are either you get to play in one city for the whole game. That's the option. Or it's, hey, how about we throw in all these other cities in a big open world, but only a couple of them actually feel different. Because that was my problem with Origins was, yeah, you can go to multiple different places, but to be honest, there's only one city, and that's Alexandria, that actually felt different and unique than some of the other Egyptian cities in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
this is a problem with just focusing on one little small slice instead of a little bit of a bigger picture.
Right, exactly.
And it does feel too like the assassins would operate, yes, they operate in one area, but they're a bit more bigger picture. Mm-hmm. Like how Ezio has to go to different areas in Europe to actually progress his mission. And there's nothing wrong with Rome. I think Rome is great, and I think Rome was done very in depth and well, and so was Constantinople. There's a quality over quantity type argument. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a lot of quantity of cities now. There's a lot of quantity of locations. But do they all feel unique?
Right.
That's kind of my question, especially about the RPG era. And I like the RPG era.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. But I do think that something like what you're talking about, especially Assassin's Creed 1, 2, and 3, like the numbered titles, that's missing. And, I actually sort of count 4 a little more than you do, because I kind of consider the water like that frontier type thing.
Yeah, it is similar, yeah.
But I do agree with you that, as amazing as that game is, a lot of the areas, like the towns, feel fairly similar because of the technology level, the distance between them. I think that there's a little bit more of that distance and change in culture when you look at something like Boston versus New York in Assassin's Creed 3.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a bigger difference there to me. Or when you look at something like Venice versus Monteriggioni.
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel like what they do mainly is they say that, well, the homestead, whatever your customizable homestead is, or your base, that's the in-between land. And I don't think it needs to be. We had an in-between land and we had Masyaf. We had an in-between land and we had the villa at Monteriggioni.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an in-between land which was the frontier, and we had, the house, the homestead.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to just have one. I think having both is really unique, and I kind of miss that.
Yeah, and also the in-between land area, it first of all expanded on the game, which was cool. But the part I liked about it was that also felt like its own unique area too. So it's like you're also, not only are you just getting, for example, in the case of Assassin's Creed 1, there's 4 different cities, if you count Masyaf as one, 4 different cities you can visit. So not only do you just have that, but you also have a 5th area too.
Mm-hmm.
You have the whole in-between land area.
In the Holy Land.
Yeah. So it's like, I feel like it expanded on the game in a way that it added to it, but it also made the cities feel very unique. And also it kind of made you excited, if that makes sense, to get to the next city, because it's like, oh, I'm in Damascus right now. I kind of want to go to Jerusalem. Oh, cool, I'm going to travel there. Instead of just being like, oh, just fast travel, I guess.
I think that this started to get hurt a little bit when they started pushing fast travel.
Yeah.
And I know that you need it because the game's got too big.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even Assassin's Creed 3, I actually think it's a much more immersive experience if you're a little more sparing on how much you fast travel.
Yeah, it is.
That doesn't mean you don't use it, but I'm saying if you just jump from point A to B all the time, that world's going to feel very disconnected.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're traveling through the frontier and doing stuff, especially on your first playthrough, that feels a lot more connected.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you were to cut out the sailing of Edward and just go from point A to point B, you're missing a lot of the fun of the game, I think.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like they've kind of tried to cut that out. They've tried to streamline it and make it like, just get to point B right now. And even Valhalla, when you were playing that, I remember that a criticism of it that I remember you had, and also that I noticed, was that a lot of the in-between areas in between points of interest are pretty samey,
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I do think you can do this in a just open world seamless thing if you want. I just don't think Assassin's Creed has done the best job of that, except maybe in Rome, where Rome is just one big open world, but the different districts of Rome actually felt very different.
Yeah.
I thought. But, we do see like full open world games like Fallout New Vegas. They do this idea without having some, hub and pathway. I just think Assassin's Creed was best with this idea when they had that. It felt like these things had more direction to them.
Well, and I feel like it also gave the creators of it more of an incentive to actually develop these cities uniquely.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going back to what I was mentioning at the beginning of the video. When you just kind of create a bunch of cities, it's like, well, let's just get a big open world of England together. I feel like a lot of the developers are just kind of like, okay, well, let's just expand it, and there we go. Okay, let's have London here. Let's, put this over here. Okay, whatever. But when you just have this, it kind of limits it, but it also makes it feel more alive, if that makes sense. Because the content that is there matters, and the content that is made actually is different.
So you're saying it's more noticeable if, like, just let me throw an example out here. If you were to have Jerusalem and Damascus, and you had to go to each of them and they felt exactly the same,
yes,
that would be much more noticeable than if you're walking around the map of Valhalla and you just find another small town or grouping of huts that feels like another one. You're saying that traveling specifically to this other area that is named and different, if that doesn't feel different, that's going to be very noticeable, whereas they are able to get away with making settlements in different areas more samey now.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just all seamless, so you don't really think about it as you travel through it.
Right, yeah, you're just kind of running through and stuff like that. So I guess, to kind of further expand and just give another example here of what I'm talking about. I've played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, well, I guess discounting the ones that, like Brotherhood, that we play on the channel and stuff like that. That is the most recent Assassin's Creed that I've played, like personally on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think that would probably be the most fresh in my brain. However, if you were to tell me, like, hey, describe the city of London in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, off the top of my head, I wouldn't really be able to describe it to you. It's not because I hate the game. It's not because I didn't explore London, I platinumed it. It's not because of anything like that. It's just because the city of London didn't stand out to me any differently than any of the other cities in the game. Now, let's take that to Assassin's Creed 1. You were to ask me, hey, describe the city of Jerusalem, and describe that differently than Damascus. I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, there's a lot of other cool features in Jerusalem, different, because it's memorable.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's because they had that in-between land connecting them, so it kind of forced the developers to shrink the game down a little bit, which forced them to actually create each of the towns differently. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
I
do.
So, and that's the same with 1 and 2, is Venice, Florence, Monteriggioni, all these towns you can go to, they're all unique. They're all different experiences. I go to Venice. I have a very vivid image in my brain of Venice. Why? Because it's completely different than Florence. You know, it's completely different than Monteriggioni. I feel like I'm going to Venice and I'm actually in like a completely different town because I am.
Yeah.
And it's memorable. And then Assassin's Creed 3 did this, I feel like, with the Frontier and New York and Boston, same thing. I remember all 3 vividly. And then you get to something like, for example, Unity, and where they started to just be like, well, let's develop one big city.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, yeah, this is cool. Like, I like Paris. This is awesome. But then they did the same thing with London and Syndicate, where it's like, well, how about we just go to London? And then they did the same, and then they started to expand that more with the RPGs, but in expanding it, you've lost the character.
Your point isn't that you can't do that with an open world.
Right.
It's just that Assassin's Creed did it better when it wasn't.
Yes.
You know, it's not
1,
that they
2, and
can't.
3. 1, 2, and 3, I think, did this the best.
Yeah, it's not that they can't. It's just that they were best at doing it this other way. Because there are games that do this, you know, where you go to a different place and it feels different.
Yeah.
Elden Ring.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of countryside that feels the same, sure, especially in, you know, Limgrave and stuff like that. I feel like I'm going to lose people here who are not From Software fans, so I'll make this quick. Okay. But when you go into a different, you know, big area, big city, like a castle or something in Elden Ring, it feels very unique. Mm-hmm. It feels like its own area. Or when you get to the Blood Palace, you know, it feels very different. That kind of thing, I think Assassin's Creed did better when it was all connected by, like, hub lands.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like now that it's not, like you said, and not to put words in your mouth, I guess, like I was describing, like, from what you're saying, I feel like there's less stakes to the world development. You know, if you were like, you need to have 10 cities in this area, okay, fine. Well, you're not really going to be thinking in your head after you travel from, like, one side of the map to the other, oh, this feels the same. You're going to be thinking, like, oh, another city. Whereas if you have to pass through the kingdom, and you go from Damascus and all of a sudden you're in Jerusalem and it's like just Damascus again, you're gonna be like, this is just Damascus.
Right.
You know, that's in your head because you remember that one singular location.
Right.
Same with Kingdom Hearts world. You remember that world.
Yes.
You know, and when you have these separations, we used to see this with video games. Every video game, do you remember when every video game had levels?
Yes.
You'd beat a level and you'd move on to the next level.
Each of the levels were memorable.
People remembered which level was which.
Yeah.
They'd always have a least favorite. Like, oh, that water level sucked. Or like, oh, this level sucked.
Right.
And once we've moved to everything is open world, this video is almost about how not everything has to be.
Yeah.
You know, like, you can have a connected open world that's, like, slightly more linear like this, too, and it's still open enough, but it creates more stakes in differentiating your world areas. I don't feel like every area now has its unique culture or its unique, you know, set of people. I feel like a lot of them just have the same culture and the same set of people. It's just that I found it and I went across the, you know, countryside. Now I'm here, I do a couple missions, and I leave, and I forget about it.
Right.
I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, and it almost kind of feels lazy to me.
It's weird to say when the games are so big.
Well, yeah,
I feel
exactly.
like it feels lazy, but it's like you can do big but not do artistic vision, like make things unique.
You know, and the one thing I will say about this, and this might lose me some followers, but I actually loved Odyssey.
Do you have any?
No.
Oh, okay.
But it might lose you followers.
Oh, uh-oh.
But I actually loved Odyssey, and I think Odyssey out of the RPG games did this the best. Like, for example, the city of Sparta is very different than the city of Athens, for example, in the game. And there's also other islands you can go to and stuff like that. Odyssey did this great, where I feel like a lot of the areas were very unique. It actually did it amazingly. I loved it. But kind of going back to the originals, that's something I wish more games did. Like, I wish in, for example, Unity, I understand it's all in Paris, but I wish they would have given me another one, another city, that's maybe close to Paris, something that's unique.
I'm just glad they didn't tell us who was in Paris.
I know, that's...
Other than Arno. That's like a big test with the Brotherhood.
I don't know if you want to know who's
You know how like one of the lead assassins is actually black, and that's like a big deal at that time, that they weren't racist. Like, they were some of the only people that weren't racist,
right,
the assassins.
right.
They were forward thinking.
Right.
One of the tests Arno has to pass to get in is they say, "Who else is in Paris, Arno?"
And they all like stare at him.
He's like,
come on, Arno, say it. You see like Samuel L. Jackson coming out from behind. Say it. Come on.
Try it.
I don't like to say it.
Try it.
Really? Seriously?
We're not going to have this conversation unless you say it.
I want you to say it.
"It's just a word, Arno."
So anyways, yeah, that's kind of my whole point, is I wish Assassin's Creed would go back to what they did in 1, 2, and 3.
I do too.
Because I thought those were great. It really made that game and that world feel alive to me.
I feel like it also makes people go back to it more.
Yes.
I think that you can do this in one city, and you can do this in a wide open world. You just have to be willing to.
Right.
And I don't know if Assassin's Creed has proven that they're willing to do this, unless it's segmented like that. Hey, let us know what you think in the comments down below. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let us know what you think. Also, by the way, we are playing through Assassin's Creed Brotherhood right now over on the Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays. The link to that is in the description down below. My wife Jill has a very wonderful channel where she talks about different toy reviews. She does also videos on Pokemon, Sailor Moon. We hope you have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shui.